alcoholics and addicts normally have what some people call a disease of perception. We don't always see ourselves correctly. We don't always see the world as reality. We see the way things the way we want to, and a lot of times it's a negative. That's not good for us. We tend to see the holes in things rather than the good in things, and a lot of times it's within ourselves. Now, we may be pompous or appear arrogant or all those things, but inwardly we're not feeling that way. That's a projection that comes from the inferiority that we're actually feeling, that emptiness that we're feeling.
You're listening to When God Intervenes, the podcast where faith, hope, and healing come together for families with a loved one battling addiction. All right, now I'm here with Jason Chane. Jason is the founder and owner of Augustine Recovery in St. Augustine, Florida. He lives in Hawaii. And I had the opportunity to meet Jason not too long ago, and we talked a good bit and got to know him pretty well. And I think he's going to have a lot of good things to talk to you parents about, in terms of giving you some tips. And we'll just start off, Jason, why don't you just introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started with Augustine Recovery.
Thank you, Daryl. I was born in Texas, a small town. Raised that way. I ended up, through my own personal experience with drugs and alcohol. I was kind of I was a good kid, raised right, all the right things that, you could ask for a child. I was a straight A student. I excelled in sports. I worked really hard at things. I was raised with that hardcore work ethic and all those values, and really wanted to do something with my life. I left that small town, went to college to play football, and I had a lot of dreams of, really doing big things with my life. And I also experienced a ton of trauma as a child. Growing up in a small town, there's a lot of things that get swept under the rug. And my experiences there, my childhood was not easy. I was a high achiever because I needed to be somebody, because on the inside, I didn't really feel like much. I always felt a little alien. I can remember I always used to look at the stars, and that's where I felt like I was really from. I was like, that's where I want to go home one day, and hopefully soon. But it was a painful upbringing, even though on the outside it looked really good. There was a lot of violence. There was a lot of yelling. There was a lot of trouble with money. There was a lot of squalor in my life, and there was plenty of pain. And for me, I grew up really embarrassed of the way that we had it, and I always wanted to be something other than I was. I also learned to kind of be a chameleon, because I learned to get along with just about anyone, because, growing up poor, there's some level of that crosses over cultures. So, with African American people, Mexican people, I tended to get along with everybody, because we had this common experience of, they made fun of me, I made fun of them. And, being in athletics, I ultimately felt, that camaraderie. So I really figured out how to be different people all the time, whatever situation I was in. I was raised by, my dad was a Marine in Vietnam. So he had what would be called shell shock, or PTSD. Now we know it, but he struggled with a lot of things from that war that left a mark on him, and that in turn left a mark on our family, because the anger, the violence, those things over time would be pretty strong. And my mother was really young. She got pregnant with me in high school. I experienced a pretty interesting life. I always say my initiation into the Earth School was a little odd. But I think most of us are. And the thing with trauma, what I've learned, it's not always the events that make the biggest difference. What events we've endured. It's what message I take about myself from the event. I had experiences early on sexually with an older cousin that made me feel as if I was dirty. And I always kind of carried that with me. And one of the things that affected in me was it never allowed me to chase the good girls. I never felt like I was worthy of that. So it really set a course for my life. And it wasn't just that, the molestation happened. That's not a great event or great events that happen over time, but that it told me something about myself that I carried with me that changed the trajectory and course of my life. So in dealing with families and people that come to us for help, it's a rich story. And once you understand the story, once you get the whole thing, once you really get down to it, it explains all the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
It always does, because a lot of times, when I first started working in the field, I worked at a place in Texas, and I loved it. I knew I was home. As soon as I started working in treatment, I knew that the search for meaning, the search for what I was supposed to do, that was over. I was where I was supposed to be, and I've been there ever since.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's like I always wanted to reach people and knew that I had like a song to sing, but there was never an audience,
Mm-hmm.
and there was never an opportunity to get on stage, and that treatment provided that, and it was just such a natural thing. They talk about a flow state. I've always felt the flow state when I'm working with people that struggle with addiction and families as well. It's like the words just come. I don't have to reach for them. They're just there, and they're different every time. So I don't ever, I don't know what I'm going to say today. I don't know what I'm ever going to say. It just happens. My upbringing gave me unique perspective into how to deal with people that I come along with, because I always say I've been through every chamber of hell. And the good thing about that is when you're in that chamber, I know how to get you. I know how to get out of here. I have directions as to the way out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good thing to have. You want somebody who's been through some pain. You want somebody who's experienced some of these hardships and to come out the other side to be the one working with your loved one, because there's a certain amount of trust and rapport that has to be built that just can't be built when you don't have it.
Yeah.
There, in my experience, people that come to treatment, they're not always there because they want to be. And a lot of times, when we're talking with families, the family's always worried, oh, have they hit their bottom? I don't know if this is going to be a waste of time. I don't know if they're ready. And to me, it doesn't matter if you think they're ready or not. If we wait for a physical bottom to happen, that it may never happen. And a lot of times the way things are now is, sadly, death happens before a bottom happens. Fentanyl makes that possible. So do all the drugs, the synthetics. Kids losing their mind over synthetics that never coming back from these experiences. It's a very scary time. I did some math just because my dad was, a Marine in Vietnam, and I see that 58,000 Americans died in the entirety of the Vietnam War, and that's a lot of men and women. But last year, over 100,000 people died from overdose.
Yeah.
And that's not to even get into the complications that come from alcoholism, heart disease, hypertension, all these other things that are really linked to it. There's so many more. So to me, I would think as a parent, probably the scariest thing in 1969 would have been to think your loved one was going to go fight in that war. As a parent, you would be anxious. You'd be terrified. Oh my God, my son or my daughter's going over there to fight. I may never see him again. Parents today have I think 2,500 soldiers died last year, and we got 100,000 people overdosing. So you're at least 30 times more likely to lose your child to addiction than you are war right now. And that's a pretty sobering fact. So parents, whether they realize it or not, are extremely traumatized through just walking this journey with their loved one that's struggling with it. And there's a lot of love and compassion that goes out to anybody who this touches, because there's no easy way out of it. And a lot of times you're danged if you do and you're danged if you don't. You do the best you can. You tough love, and that doesn't seem to work. You give in and give them things, and that doesn't seem to work. It's not a logical illness at all. And if you apply logic to it, it's just more confusing, because they're never going to take the long, hard road. They're always going to take the easy, softer way that never amounts to freedom. So working in the field has afforded me an opportunity to really get into the guts of what's going on with people that struggle with addiction. everybody has a little bit different story. At this point, I'd be willing to think that I've at least worked with over 1,000 men and women.
Wow.
And their families.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing it 16 years now, working in this field. Through those experiences, I've seen a lot of commonality, but I've also seen a lot of differences. And the thing is there's no one way to approach any single person, but there are some pretty universal truths that people are going to have to come to one day if they're going to find victory over this. And a lot of those are things that your grandpa and your grandma told you. It's going to be hard.
Right.
There's no shortcuts.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, you may not have to want it in the beginning, but at some point, you're going to have to want it. Because I think people that are most successful in life are people that do it even when they don't feel like it.
Yeah.
They go to work when they don't feel like it. They work out when they don't feel like it. They eat well when they don't feel like it. When ice cream sounds better. If you really want to find mastery or success in this world, it comes down to pretty simple formulas. But how do you get somebody who's never taken that road to buy into that lifestyle and to actually take that ownership of their life? And that's really the goal. And that's why it's longer term. That's why you can't just flip a switch and somebody changes. Some people have religious conversions where they experience God in a very powerful way, and it changes the course of their life. The fact of it is, though, if they don't follow that with action, solid action that also complements that move towards God, whatever God is to them, it won't sustain. If I quit working out today, in 10 years, my body would look way different from the way it would if I continue to work out, 5-6 days a week for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Everything has a shelf life, and everything has everything that we do matters. So getting people to really, first of all, it's about them feeling safe in your presence. They come in, they may fight it. They may think, oh, this is BS. These people only want my money. This silver tongue interventionist got my family to send me here, or I don't believe I need to be here. But if you've created a safe container for them and they start to see the eyes of the men, women that are around them that are actually getting better, it may begin to be attractive to them, and then they start to bond with the staff and their peers, and then all of a sudden it becomes what if it's possible? Maybe I should just give it a shot since I'm here. Can't leave, so or even if I can leave, maybe I don't want to. Maybe I'll just give it another day. And we fight that battle each and every day. We're trying to win a war, but we've got to win a lot of little battles to get to that, the ultimate victory. And sometimes we lose some of the battles along the way, but the ultimate goal is to win the war. And that's why that's why we do what we do.
I think that's a really good point because, I talk to a lot of parents that they'll say, well, my child is resistant to go to treatment, or they don't want to go to treatment, or it doesn't make any sense to send them until they're ready to go to treatment. And I'm like, well, that might not ever happen, but you have an opportunity to save their life, potentially, getting them into treatment. And once they have a chance for to get sober, get the drugs out of their system a little bit, and for their thinking to sort of return to somewhat baseline, then they can make better decisions. And like you said, it's a kind of a one day at a time thing where they're seeing other people around them, and they find themselves there, and then they're like, okay, I'm here. I might as well do this, right?
Yeah. It's never going to be, in my experience, waiting for someone with a damaged brain and body and spirit to rise up and say, I want this for myself. It's a maddening situation.
Yeah.
And yes, you may send them to treatment and no, they may not stay sober, but you've drastically changed the course of their life. And I hope, my goal is that everybody that comes through the door of our place is for them to stay sober for here on out. Like that's the goal. We don't want anything less than that. The only thing the only thing I'll settle for, if there's no other way around it, if they are not in that space where they're going to give it 100%, or they still have a reservation that maybe they can go smoke weed or do something like that, is I want their time with us to bring them as close to their last use as possible. So if they go out there and they hide, because they can hide it sometimes.
Yeah.
They can tell you what you want to hear, and we're very trained at looking at that. We're pretty good at BS. But if somebody wants to hold in, then they have that right, and they can. It's a hard thing. That's why long-term treatment is better too, because it's really hard to hold your breath as long as we want them to hold it. But every now and then you run into a very, very persistently defiant person. And most addicts and alcoholics are that way. There's no easy people that come to us.
Right.
The people that appear to be easy are just compliant, and they tell us what we want to hear. But they're really not easy, because somebody can say yes, sir, and no, ma'am, and not change at all.
Yeah.
And just learn to play the game, because just like I was a chameleon, they learn the rules and they learn how to use them to their advantage. So we have to be trained at that. We have to look beyond that. We have to see, is somebody, on an energetic level really changing. And but a family, my heart goes out to them, because my family also struggles in this. I have brothers and sisters that struggle with addiction. I'm going to have nieces and nephews that struggle with this addiction. I have children. There's no way around it. And it's always easier to give advice for other people's kids than it is for your own. We tend to make love blinds all of us. And the thing is families always do what they think is the most loving thing. Even when it's tough love, they don't call it tough love because it's tough on them. It's tough on the giver.
Yeah.
And as hard as that is, you're trying to do it because you're trying to do the most loving thing. The problem with alcoholism and addiction, like I said earlier, is it makes fools of all of us. Because it tends to, whatever route we take doesn't tend to work. That's why giving somebody else an opportunity that's not in the immediate family, because no matter, it's funny all the time. We have family intensives where the family comes spend like 3 days with us. And I might do a group or something, or one of our employees will do a group, one of our team, and we'll talk about things. And then after the group, a good proud dad will come up and he'll say, I've been telling him this same shit for 10 years and he had never listened to it. And now you're saying it and he's buying what you're saying. I just don't get it. And the truth is that sometimes it does. They've heard it from you. They just shut you off. There's no way you're going to get in. And a fresh set of eyes, a fresh start with somebody else sometimes they might be able to hear it for the first time, and not only hear it, but put it into practice. The main deal with treatment, and I think a lot of times where a lot of treatment falls short, is this has to become second nature for somebody. You can't just show them what to do and then hope that they pick it up. You've got to put these actions into practice. And that practice has to be an everyday thing where we develop habits that actually carry with us when we leave. I want to teach somebody how to cook. I want to teach somebody how to live. I want to teach somebody self-actualization. My goal, if somebody sends their son to me, is I don't want their son to be dependent on them when they leave. Yes, they may help a little bit if they're honoring their recovery, but I would really love their son to pick up, take care of their food, take care of their job, take care of their living, and eventually be free. And that's the goal, because I don't think any family really wants a dependent son at 30, 40 years old, but that's what we're running into. I mean, we have families all the time that have sons in their 40s and 50s that are coming to us that are completely and utterly still angry at mom and dad, blaming them for all the things in their life and still living off of them completely, but making them pay the price for it. And for them, it's reaching them. And, most of them all want freedom. They're like, I don't want my dad making these choices for me anymore. I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't either, but you're going to have to stay sober. That's
Yep.
step one for this. If you want to be free, let's put a plan together to get there. And what it takes is you're going to have to follow what we're lining out for you right now, because without that foundational block, you will always be beholden to them.
Yeah.
And they don't want it, and you don't want it. They might love you, but they don't want to raise you like you're 7 and 10 years old anymore. They would love to see you fly. They would love to see you spread your wings. And so ultimately, sobriety is the foundational block for it, but we're talking about much bigger things than that. We don't want people to just survive or exist. We want blossoming. We want something that, a life worth living. That's why we pay so much attention to the food that we serve them, to the way that they exercise. We believe in so many different things that elevate that person, that they feel good about themselves for the first time. They see dramatic changes within their spiritual being, but then their emotional and physical. And they feel good about themselves when they're ready to go or enter the next phase of their recovery. Hey, they're excited to go to meetings. Why? Because they look good. They feel good. That's important. I want somebody feeling like they have something to offer the world.
So it sounds like you're, aside from getting them sober, you're equipping them with life skills to be able to succeed in life, and you're giving them tools to work with, and building their self-esteem, building their confidence. Are those some of the things that you would say make Augustine Recovery unique or different, or there's some other things? What kind of things make your program a little bit different? And I know you mentioned sons. You mentioned sons a little bit earlier, so you don't work with the ladies right now. But so tell us a little bit more about some of the unique things about Augustine.
Well, the place is going to be unique as your staff is. I mean, really, when it gets down to it, it's the people that are there, and that's always been the case. We've always been blessed with very unique, special people that have somehow ended up in this spider web of Augustine Recovery that are here. And it's a small place, so it's long term and it's small, so we don't have a bunch of people running through there all the time. We develop deep, meaningful relationships with the men that come to us and their families. We look at things as if it's not just the client that's in our care that is the client, it's the entire family system, because we look at things more as like a nuclear unit. Like I see things like we're all connected. I don't think it's just an individual thing. And I don't think, from what I can see, if I really study the natural world, and I always have, I've always been fascinated by the natural world. And if I think about the family, let's say like a herd of gazelles are all together and the lions come to get the gazelles. And as long as the gazelles stay in the herd, they're pretty safe. But when the lions get off one by themselves, they tend to have their way with it. And that's a sad thing to watch. I always have to turn away from the TV. I don't like watching the end result of that. But really, when I think about addiction, it's like that. It separates us from the nuclear family, from the bigger piece, from people at large, from the goodness of the world. And really, when we get alone, it really takes advantage of us and hurts us. So, and alcoholics and addicts normally have what some people call a disease of perception. We don't always see ourselves correctly. We don't always see the world as reality. We see the way we want to, and a lot of times it's a negative. That's not good for us. We tend to see the holes in things rather than the good in things. And a lot of times it's within ourselves. Now, we may be pompous or appear arrogant or all those things, but inwardly we're not feeling that way. That's a projection that comes from the inferiority that we're actually feeling, that emptiness that we're feeling. So to be trained in that, and know that these are, people come to us and they fight us like crazy. This is the truth of it. Is treatment is not easy. Not if you're going to be good at it. Not if you're going to give your heart to it. You're going to attempt to get in there and into somebody's heart and help them to see things about themselves that they don't believe are true anymore. That's the goodness of them. But they're also going to have to work It's not just, oh, you're great and let's celebrate you. It's like, I hear I honor the fact that you've been through a lot of pain in your life, and that pain would have destroyed dang near anybody else. But you're still here, and you're resilient, strong, actually. And how are we going to use those gifts that you have to propel you into a different place in the world, to a different place in life where you actually want to live, where you actually want to sing your song that's uniquely yours? So it's time to get there. And how do I bring that out of somebody? So that rapport building process, that it takes time. The thing is this, I have to build that rapport with them. So I have to walk through all the darkness with them. Our staff does.
Mm-hmm.
But then once we get them to that place where they know and ultimately trust that they're in good hands and that they're really cared for, then they're going to let us in on the darkness. They're going to let us in on the secrets. They're going to let us in on the pain. And we honor that, and we walk with them. At the same time, there's a piece that, I really believe in my heart, is that victims don't recover. And that's a pretty blanket statement for a lot of things. But in it, what I really want to say about that is, no matter how much darkness somebody's been through, we're going to try to help them, and along with them, teach them how to use that darkness to their advantage, how to turn all that darkness into gold that can be used to help other people. Because all the pain that I've been through, and there was a lot of it, it's all been made for good use today.
Yeah.
I realized that all these things I had to go through, even though I didn't understand them at the time, they've helped to connect me with other people who've been through all those same chambers of hell that I have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And now it's like my greatest gift, all this crap. And I'm not unique in that.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the hero's journey for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And for people that come to us, that's my greatest hope, is that they come to us as victims, but they would never leave that way. And they understand that they've got something to do here on earth, and God's got a plan for them. And how are they going to put that into action? How is that going to happen for them? And I know every family. I've never talked to a family that didn't believe that their loved one had inner gifts that were being underutilized.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
In your heart. I mean, I've talked to, I don't know how many moms and how many dads and how many husbands and how many kids that just wish their loved ones could see what they could see. But they're dealing with a shell of a person. They wish they could have that light in their eyes that they had 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. They don't have it anymore, but it's still there. If they're still alive, there's still hope. And that's the thing. Like, no matter how overwhelming it feels as a family to think he'll never agree to go, even if he goes, he's going to leave. Even if he doesn't leave, he's not going to get better. He's not going to listen to him. That's the darkness in the world would have you believe all that stuff to keep you from taking action. But none of it's true. You can't underestimate whatever God's power is when opportunity meets, like the right time, right place. And, I just, I've done interventions. I've worked in this field a long time. I see people all the time stay sober that had no intention of doing it when they got there.
Right.
Because, in the same way that victims don't recover, it doesn't matter if you have to hold an intervention to get your loved one to treatment. That doesn't mean it's not going to work. That doesn't mean they won't take it seriously, because something magical may happen while they're there.
That's right.
And I see that more often than not. That's the truth. Because they get in a container that's safe. They get in a container where there's help and guidance and love. And then all of a sudden, when they're in that environment, the environment starts to shift the way their body, their mind, their spirit starts to interact with the world. And it starts to change them from the inside out. And that's why treatment's important. That's why sometimes it's tough for somebody to just, do all their day-to-day work and then try to stay sober at the same time. It's a tall task, stepping away from that situation and going to a place where everything permeates is healthy. It really makes it
Yeah.
hard to fight it. They'll fight it. Don't get me wrong, but our
Mm-hmm.
goal is we don't give up, and we know how to hold our breath too. We know we know that it's going to take a while, and we don't plan on just trying to force somebody to change. It's going to happen naturally, but we just need enough time, enough energy, and enough things to go our way, and we just do the best we can to play that game of chess. It's not checkers, it's chess.
Yeah.
When it comes to alcoholism and addiction, this is not. That's why there's people that specialize in doing it, just like people that specialize in other things. It's just we have our unique experience with it.
I've had the opportunity now to meet quite a few people who are in long-term recovery, and I saw this in my own son too. And you mentioned this earlier, the gifts that are there. Our friend Sam Davis, I hear him say a lot of times that God gave us addiction to keep us from taking over the world, right? and I think there's a lot of truth to that. I see so many, and every parent that you talk to, they will tell you all about the gifts, the amazing gifts that their child has, and if they can just overcome this one issue that they're dealing with, it would be the things that they could accomplish would be amazing. And so I just hate to see. I know sometimes parents get discouraged and they feel like giving up. You have any sort of parting words or any advice for parents or tips or anything else that kind of comes to mind that you could share with them?
Well, I guess first and foremost, like, never give up, no matter how bleak it looks. As long as they're still here, there's a chance in it. And I know a lot of people who aren't here as a result of this. I know that many of us have a lot of personal experience with that, Daryl, you included. I know a lot of people have experienced tremendous loss through this disease. But there's always, and there's no reason to believe that that it can't work. And just having that attitude in it that they have a special song to sing, and they haven't sung it yet. There's a man in Austin that used to say something that always, it stuck with me. It was in my first year, and I heard him say this, and he said when he was 23 years old, he was really struggling with drugs and alcohol, and he tried to kill himself. He didn't see a way out. Well, it didn't work. And as he told this story, he had 35 years sober. He was in his 50s, late 50s, when he told me the story. And he said, had that attempt been successful, he said, it would have been a homicide rather than a suicide, because I would have killed a stranger. And it's always stuck with me, because we don't know who we are. We don't have any idea why we're here. We haven't figured it out yet. And the addiction is suicide on an installment plan. It's really all it is. And I don't know why I'm trying to kill myself. I don't know why I don't believe that I think I deserve to be on this world, or that I have something to do, but I do. And as a family member, just because you love them and you can see all that doesn't mean that you don't have to hold your ground with them. And it doesn't mean that you don't have to call them to the carpet and say, now's the time, son, daughter, now's the time. We love you. And this is the most loving thing we can do for you, is put you in a position where other people that have struggled like you, that care, can maybe do the best they can with you. Because as it stands right now, we've done the best we can, and this is where we are. And please understand, this comes from a place of love. And most interventionists this day and age, it's always love that goes into it. We think it's going to be this big fight. It's not a big fight.
Yeah.
There's love that goes into it, and that's really what gets transmitted. And I've seen a lot of amazing transformations. My hope is just that every single person gets an opportunity to do what they came here to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to have a short book for a life. It doesn't have to have just a few chapters. Gets to have more, gets to have that opportunity. Not everybody gets it, but I think, you know, I just, I have seen more amazing transformations happen. I mean, I've seen people leave treatment. You know, they walk down the street and the family holds their ground and doesn't pick them up, and then they come back to our place, and here they are 8 years later. They're still sober.
Yeah,
And had
that's
that
awesome.
family given up or picked them up at that point in time, it was such a critical moment.
Mhm,
Had
mhm.
they folded, even though they were telling them, if you don't pick me up, I'm going to hurt myself, you name it. I mean, it's so hard. There is nothing easy. And to families that are trying to do this alone, please don't. This just, it's just like the gazelles getting off by themselves with the lions. You're in the same boat. You trying to do
Mhm.
this by yourself, you against the world,
Yep,
it's impossible. And I
yep.
know a lot of times moms and dads, husbands and wives can't always make the same decisions over what to do with their loved ones. You know, there's
Mhm,
sometimes
mhm.
there's conflicting. I think he's ready, but I don't. I don't think he needs to do this much. I would always err on the side of doing more than you think you need to do.
Yep.
I would always err on the side of let's, let's do the best we can for him. And just watch out for treatment centers that you might just Google and find online. The best
Right,
places are not going to be the the top of where you find them. That's going to be a
right.
call center that you're going to call in. There's a lot of, I don't want to say bait and switch, but there's just not. You need you need somebody who's got a little bit of experience in the field to help guide you to make those decisions, because where you send your loved one to treatment is an important decision, and
Mhm,
it's
mhm.
you're gonna be you're gonna be impulsive, and you're gonna be scared
That's
when you
right.
finally make that call, and a lot of times people capitalize on that.
Yep,
That you might go to a subpar place, and they're all expensive, so
that's right.
you can spend your money on something good, or you can spend your money, the exact same amount of money on something where it's not the same, because we all look good online. We all look good on the internet. We're all holistic healing places of the mind, body, and spirit. The buzzwords are all there for everybody because they catch people's attention. The fact of it is once you get into the guts of it, places are really different.
Yep.
And having somebody, a professional in the field, or at least somebody who's had some experience, guide you into a place, at least help you, give you some options, like this place is good for this place is great for this. That really helps. But I know not everybody has the time or the resources to do that. But if
Mhm.
you do, I think you spend your resources much more intelligently, and much more effectively,
Yep.
if you get a little bit of guidance in it, because it's not easy. And it's just an area that it's sad to me, because I have so many people that call me and they say, Jason, how much is your place? And I'll tell them, and they'll just sigh. They're like, I wish I'd have found you 4 years ago, because now I don't have that anymore, because I've already sent him to 4 30-day places that
Yep.
costs all this. And now, we've already remortgaged our home, and we've done all these things. And I'm just heartbroken that this place sounds great. And I just don't, I wish I'd have known.
Yep.
And we do our best to work with people
Mhm.
regardless of their situation. And, but it's, it's just, it's that part of things, the family's experiences, and that the families lose faith in the whole process because they
Mhm.
have negative experiences with treatment centers that don't keep them in the loop, or they don't know anything, they don't help them. They just I hope to always be the antithesis, the exact opposite of that. I
Yep.
hope a family has an experience with us, they have a legitimate, unique, personal experience with us where they feel like they're our family by the time their loved one gets to us, and by the time their loved one commences from our place to wherever they're going next. I want that family to feel like they always can come to St. Augustine, Florida, and have a home there. Always, they'll always be a part of their story. So,
Well, you mentioned a minute ago, I've walked through that. I've been down that path myself, where trying to decide on treatment for Chase, and everything you mentioned about being impulsive and having that fear, and it's just hard to think straight, right? Yeah, I can identify with all of that. I have been to Augustine Recovery, and you do have amazing staff. You've got a really amazing facility there, and a great program. And I would encourage parents who are looking to give you a call, to call Augustine Recovery and get some information, to at least consider your program before they make a decision. Jason, it's been great, man. I've enjoyed hanging out with you a little bit, and we'll have to get together again soon. Just have a phone conversation and catch up a little bit. But
Thank you, Daryl. Yeah.
thanks for
Yeah.
being willing to come in today and share with us, and all the way from Hawaii. Must be rough.
That's what everybody says. You can suffer anywhere. You can suffer anywhere, though, Daryl.
Yeah. Oh,
they,
yeah, for
they
sure.
say no matter where you go, there you are.
That's right.
If you're the problem, Hawaii can't fix that either.
That's
So
right. Yeah.
I've had good days and bad days, but
Yeah.
I do love it here. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's been great catching up with you, and I'll see you again soon.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Have a good one, Jason. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to When God Intervenes. If you found today's episode helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. Your feedback helps us reach more families in need of hope and healing. For more resources and support, visit our website at thefamilyrecoverycoach.com. Until next time, stay strong and keep the faith.